Chapter 81. Future Blueprint. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When I looked to you for investment in the past, you acted like you weren't interested. BDNVL. Yen Cheng's gaze swept over coldly, ignoring his joke. Who would mind earning more money? Air Tea House made a lot of profit. Sometimes, his friends said that they were jealous of him. He didn't even need to do anything and he could earn all that money. That must be an amazing feeling. That was true, but they also knew that the management in Air House wasn't as successful as before. There were countless established restaurants and clubs in the capital. Air Tea House must be unique and managed differently in order to attract customers. In the early stage, if it weren't that Yen family was wealthy enough for Yen Cheng to experiment, Air Tea House was indeed on the verge of closing down. After they got through that period of time, Air Tea House was brought back to live. From then on, it had been becoming more and more prosperous. Within 2 years, it had made a reputation in the capital. Today, Yen Cheng had already paid back the investment Yen family made and even returned the interest too. He acted arrogant in front of his father and said, "I can support myself even if I don't go to the company." People usually saw the end result, but didn't see the sacrifices and hard work one had to make to become successful. Undeniably, Air Tea House made enough profit for Yen Cheng to support himself. But he didn't want to continue this. He took a sip of tea and glanced at the window, narrowing his eyes. He said vaguely, "I need to raise my family." Chai Yu heard it clearly. Then, he rolled his eyes speechlessly. Yen Cheng happily planned out, "I'm using the profit made from Air Tea House to raise my wife." Yen Cheng crossed one leg over the other and exclaimed, "The money earned from investment will be used to raise my daughter." Yen Cheng thought about it before saying, I will support both daughter and mother indulgently." Chai Yu was speechless. The air suddenly became tense. After a dozen seconds or so, the atmosphere relaxed. Chai Yu's expression transformed from one of confusion to shock. Then, he slapped his thigh and moved over, "Sister-in-law is pregnant." The moment he said this, he then looked at the cigarette boxes on the table, understanding. Who knew that? Yen Cheng shook his head. No, Chai Yu was flabbergasted. Yen Cheng exclaimed, "Don't be anxious. You'll get a chance to give us money." Yen Cheng continued, "Help me look after the investment first." Chai Yu nodded and patted his chest, "Leave it up to me." He paused for 2 seconds and then suddenly interjected, "Wait, no, I remember that you still have shares in the Yen Group, no? Second Master Yen was in control of the Yen Group right now." Chai Yu always thought that Yen Cheng eluded the same imposing manner as Second Master Yen when he placed away the casual and careless aura. "I do." Yen Cheng pursed his lips and continued, "The shares are for my son." Chai Yu didn't know what to say. "It seems like you've already outlined your future blueprint." "Amazing, amazing." Chai Yu secretly admired Chen Jinyao for having such a loyal husband, and at the same time, he tugged the corner of his lips. "We just haven't seen each other in a while and you managed to make me feel amazed at you still. Young Master Yen, you changed. Uncle Yen might not even recognize you at this point." Yen Cheng was speechless. To speak the truth, Yen Cheng thought Chai Yu was just exaggerating. That was how he was at a person. However, he just hid himself usually. Everyone had a facade. However, Chai Yu was right. His encounters with his father always landed in fights and arguments. In his father's eyes, he wasn't worthy of respect. Father Yen frequently said, "My son's sole purpose is to anger me to death." Yen Cheng remembered this statement quite clearly. Chapter 82. Peacock spread its tail. 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the supermarket, Yen Cheng called Chen Jinyao. This time, although Chen Jinyao gave Yen Cheng full charge over buying groceries, the latter was confused and froze for a few moments when he glanced at the different aisles containing vegetables and meat. He paused and tightly pursed his lips, unsure of what to buy. This young master was indeed not an expert in this. Even more, he stood at the original spot feeling lost, and felt like he stood out with the surrounding. Chen Jinyao could imagine the man knitting his brows and in deep thought right now. She smiled and said with a gentle expression, "I want to boil corn and pork chop soup for you. It'd help you to recuperate." Yan Cheng became immediately expressionless. "Then buy some eggs too." "There are no eggs at home." "Then pick out some tomatoes as well." "You can buy whatever you want too." The man knitted his brows, his breathing light. He said, "Oh," and by the time he looked up and forward, the bright and vibrant colors overwhelmed Yan Cheng's eyes. He curled his tongue, sinking into decidophobia. He wasn't hungry right now and he didn't know what he wanted to eat. At this time, Chen Jinyao exclaimed meaningfully, voicing her concern, "Just buy whatever you want to eat for tonight. I'll go out and buy the rest of the ingredients and stock up." Saying this, she suddenly lowered her voice and explained, "I'm just scared that you might buy spoiled food." Yan Cheng looked down and lazily replied, "Tch. Men bought things decisively and quickly." After he bought whatever Chen Jinyao needed, he casually strolled around before heading to the cashier. Businesses have their set marketing methods. As for supermarkets, most commonly, some products were on sale. One could look around and see red and yellow labels on the discounted products. Yan Cheng was more or less influenced by Chen Jinyao, having been to the supermarket many times with her. He supported her decision to be frugal and subconsciously looked at the discounted products. He glanced at it for a while, and then got in a daze. While he was in line and waiting to pay, Yan Cheng glanced at the rectangular box that was buy two get one free. There was a glint in his eyes. He placed his hand on the shopping cart and slightly lifted his fingers, knocking against it. When it was his turn to pay, he placed everything he wanted on top. He lazily narrowed his eyes before pretending to ask carelessly, "Why are everything on discount all couples things? Couples cups, couples slippers, couples pillows, etc." Hearing this, the cashier took time out to look at him. Who knew that she was charmed and shocked at first glance? However, her occupation led her to control her expression. She said, "It's going to be May 20th in a few days." May 20th. It wasn't some sort of special day, no. Seeing the man's confused expression, the cashier was silently sure that he was a single handsome guy. But she looked down to see the ring on his ring finger in the next second. She was originally shocked and surprised, but then her expression became complicated. Damn! He doesn't even know what May 20th represents. Yet, he has a wife. The cashier pursed her lips, pitying this ignorant man's partner. "It means I love you. It's like a day for couples to show their affection." After that, silence filled the air for 2 seconds before she slowly settled the bill. "The total is $168.50. Do you need a plastic bag? If you do, it's another 30 cents. Yan Cheng slightly nodded, yes. He then came to a realization and remembered this. It was clearly profound to set a holiday based on the date. On the way back, a stroke of sunshine penetrated through the glass of the car window. He coincidentally encountered a red light, so he stopped the car steadily on the crosswalk. Yan Cheng pinched the steering wheel with the web between his thumb and forefinger. He lifted his slender and fair fingers slightly and then casually gazed at the road. He then saw a floral store. This wasn't the main city road. There were all sorts of stores on this street and each one of them had to do with literature and arts. Chapter 83. Peacock spread its tail, too. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If he turned a corner after this street, he'd arrive at their apartment building. Yan Cheng glanced at the floral store for a while before furrowing his brows a bit. He seemed to be thinking about something. When the red light started to count down, he then slowly shifted his gaze away. The green light shone. He drove over a crossroad and then had the vehicle turn indicator light on. When he arrived, he stopped in front of the floral store. He was able to unbuckle his seatbelt when he paused. He seemed to have been enlightened by the cashier. He was intelligent, and the endearing meaning that originated from a simple date made it so that he was able to deduce many things from one case. Compared to bringing a bouquet of flowers to Chen Jinyao right now, it'd be better to do it on May 20th. It would make him seem more sincere, and it'd be more romantic too. Therefore, Yan Cheng parked the car at the floral store for a moment before peering at the rearview mirror and then had the vehicle turn indicator light on again. He turned around and drove away. The owner of the floral store stood by the door, thinking that there was business, but became confused when Yan Cheng just drove off. It was May 20th in the blink of an eye. It was coincidentally Monday too. There were many couples that spent the day in advance yesterday. They took pictures and then waited until today to post it on their friends' circles. Who let today be the dreaded and resented work day? Morning came and Chen Jinyao just opened her eyes only to see Yan Cheng bringing her head close for a long and deep kiss. After it ended, the two panted heavily. Meanwhile, Chen Jinyao was confused by his sudden affection. She glared at him and asked, "What are you doing?" Yan Cheng revealed his pearly whites and smiled happily. He didn't directly respond to her question, instead saying in a greasy way, "Morning wifey." He acted a bit differently from when he usually woke up feeling grumpy. He acted like a completely different person. Chen Jinyao shivered and unnaturally wrapped the blankets around her, on alarm. After a few moments, she suggested sincerely, "Act normal. Today is a special day," he said. Chen Jinyao didn't understand to no avail. Was it because she just woke up so she couldn't recall anything? They looked at each other awkwardly. Yan Cheng didn't expose her either. He tugged the corner of his lips and started blabbering nonsense. "This is a way to improve our relationship." He finished talking and then revealed a satisfied expression. "Shameless." Then, Chen Jinyao looked away. For some reason, she decided to mock and tease him, but it didn't really feel like she was mocking him. "TCH, why didn't you say you want to improve our relationship by exercising every morning?" After she finished saying that, she just came to a sudden realization that she wasn't really mocking him at all. Rather, it supported Yan Cheng's cause. They glared at each other for a while before Yan Cheng's eyes brightened. Then his magnetic voice was mixed with a brisk tone, "That seems okay." Many days later, Su Ran finally made her decision to straighten her teeth. She texted Chen Jinyao on WeChat. When Chen Jinyao saw her message, she froze a bit. She couldn't help but feel something inside her heart. However, the feeling disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then, she felt at ease. One shouldn't have groundless fears, and they shouldn't cling on to their problems. In reality, Chen Jinyao had calmed down and thought about it carefully. The system analyzed the situation. She believed that the reason why she hadn't made it to the end with Yan Cheng was because it mostly had to do with her. Su Ran. "I agree to get my teeth straightened. Dr. Chen, when do you have time?" Chen Jinyao's eyelashes flickered and she suddenly thought that it was better to just get the pain over with. Chapter 84. Peacock spread its tail, free. You are listening at novelfull.audio. She supported her chin with one hand, and her thoughts were everywhere. What she was sure about was that the sooner she straightened Su Ran's teeth, the sooner she could stay away from her in the future. Her fingertips felt cool, hovering over the screen. She paused before typing. "Chen Jinyao. If you have time, you can come this afternoon." Su Ran. "Okay. Lo Chen Jinyao. Come at 2 p.m. Su Ran. "Alright." Su Ran. "About the fee?" Chen Jinyao. "You can pay me by WeChat." Yet, Su Ran came in advance this afternoon. This was because she had a practical class where she had to stimulate a Santable around 4 p.m. Attendance was taken for the class, so she couldn't even escape if she wanted to. Yet when she pushed the door to the clinic and entered at 12:45 p.m., it was coincidentally lunch break. Su Ran felt a bit embarrassed as she glanced at the receptionist, Xiao Lu. But recalling how her roommate said that private clinics were accommodating, she bit her lips and summoned her courage to put forward her request. Xiao Lu said, "You can sit first. I'll go ask Dr. Chen." "Okay." Chen Jinyao had just napped for a while. She sighed helplessly. Inside the room, Chen Jinyao stood by the dentistry seat and wore a light blue disposable medical mask. She bent down slightly and looked at Su Ran naturally. She wore a serious expression, beads of sweat covering her forehead. The strong light shone on the top half of her body. But the majority of the light was on Su Ran lying on the dentistry chair. "Calm down. It's almost over." She comforted Su Ran in a soft voice. Half an hour later, Chen Jinyao led Su Ran into her office. "Now is the time for the braces to be set and put into place. The braces will slowly straighten your teeth. It may hurt during the process. Also, remember to come back if the braces become loose. When your teeth are almost straightened, we'll give you retainers. I talked to you about the other things you need to pay attention to in the room." Su Ran nodded. Chen Jinyao exclaimed, "Wait a second. Let me give you a receipt." It was 3 p.m. right now. Since she made it through the exhausted stage, Chen Jinyao felt extremely spirited in contrast to her tiredness from before. She tilted her neck and massaged it before stretching her body. Then, she sat on her chair and casually swept her gaze over to see the phone she neglected on the table. She grabbed it and unlocked the phone, narrowing her eyes. She noticed that she received many messages from her WeChat. "Please wait a second." Su Ran exclaimed, "Okay." The messages were almost all from Yan Cheng. His messages were simple and blunt. Chen Jinyao slid up and clicked on the first message. It revealed that the time sent was 1:14 p.m. Yan Cheng transferred money to her account 13 times. Each time, he transferred $520. Then, he gave her 14 envelopes. Chen Jinyao clicked on one of them. There didn't seem to be a limit for the red envelopes either. Therefore, each one of them was $520 too. Chen Jinyao was shocked. At the same time, she realized what Yan Cheng was referring to today. She smiled. Then, she placed her phone to the side and then delivered a receipt to Su Ran. "Dr. Chen, then I'll be going now." "Okay." She nodded absent-mindedly. Chen Jinyao clicked on each one, confirming the transaction. Then, she happily replied with a chain of, "Ha ha ha." "Chen Jinyao. Who taught you?" "Chen Jinyao. Tomorrow is May 21st. You can keep this up." At the same time, Su Ran walked out of the clinic and bumped into the Air Tea House's boss who was just walking towards the clinic. They had encountered each other a few times. Just as they were about to walk past each other, Su Ran couldn't help but look up and glance at him. Then, the corner of her lips twitched. She looked down and quickened her pace, leaving the scene. To speak the truth, she almost couldn't recognize him at first glance. This was because at this time, Yan Cheng was wearing sunglasses and acted cool. He even carried a huge bouquet of roses in his arms, wearing a smile. He acted like a peacock spreading its tail when meeting their mate. Chapter 85. Peacock Searches for Mate, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Chen Jinyao sent that message to Yan Cheng, she suddenly dropped her shoulders down. She didn't need to work that hard this afternoon. Therefore, once she relaxed, it was clear that she felt quite tired. She raised her hand and pinched the bridge of her nose. She leaned back against her chair and lifted her head slightly, closing her eyes to rest. Despite relaxing completely, she still had some thoughts inside her mind. Before a minute passed, Chen Jingyao opened her eyes again. The entire process was like a child's play. She leaned forward and grabbed her phone that she placed on top of the documents. Yan Qing hadn't replied. She sent the last message on their chat history. Chen Jingyao lazily looked down and stared at her screen for a while. Her fingertips paused before tapping on her friend's circle. What she saw first was the message Chen Jinlin sent 2 minutes ago. It was a picture of her conversation with her boyfriend. Most importantly, the transactions made. It was that simple to put on PDA nowadays. Chen Jingyao pursed her lips and gave the post a like. Almost immediately after, Chen Jinlin tracked Chen Jinyao's friend's circle and started interrogating her. Young couples committed deeply and felt passionate about their love. This passionate and excited feeling didn't just reflect on themselves. But rather, it revealed itself between women. Maybe they all wanted to brag somewhat, so they started competing with one another using sarcasm. Chen Jinlin. Sister. The corner of Chen Jinyao's lips twitched. She subconsciously replied. Did you mute mother and father? Chen Jinlin. He, I am well aware of the situation. Chen Jinyao felt helpless. Don't just say that you are well aware. You should divulge some information to our parents when it's time to. You can't just hide him forever. It was clear that Chen Jinyao was worried for her younger sister. Chen Jinyao. Don't mind me for being annoying. The words were in her throat but she didn't know what to say. After all, those in deep love usually never listen to people's advice or critiques. It'd be good enough that they didn't retort impatiently. Short silence followed. Chen Jinlin cleverly shifted the topic. She refused to answer Chen Jinyao. The latter knitted her brows and sighed helplessly in the end. One should maintain an optimistic attitude when there wasn't a huge issue in someone else's relationship. She shouldn't bother intervening too much. Of course, there was nothing wrong with expressing her concern at a reasonable time. Therefore, with the principle that everything will be all right, the two sisters silently changed the topic. Although they did that, they knew clearly inside that they were about to jump to the main topic. Chen Jinlin. Sister, did brother.in.law do anything today? Chen Jinlin. Please refer to the first picture I sent in the friend circle. Chen Jinlin. If he didn't do anything, you can give him a hint. She sent 3 consecutive messages without pausing. It was clear that she didn't believe in her brother.in.law. Chen Jinyao was silent. Chen Jinlin thought that despite her brother.in.law settling down and was tamed by her sister, he was still a masculine and stubborn man that wasn't romantic in the least bit. People might ask her why. This was all due to a woman's intuition. As her sister, Chen Jinlin genuinely wished that her brother.in.law would treat her sister much better. Who knew that she was just being worrisome? She was basically looking for things to do. Bedo more accurately, she was looking to be fed dog food. Chen Jinyao. Of course he did. He knew the meaning of today better than me. I was just scared that I must upset you. She thought. Chen Jinyao. I estimated and your brother.in.law probably transferred 10,400 to me. Chen Jinlin was speechless. 10,400, that was a huge amount but it didn't have any special meaning. Chen Jinyao. I think I should also take a picture and post this to commemorate this moment. Here, the sisters' short conversation completely ended. Chapter 86. Peacock searches for mate, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. It was unclear whether it was her illusion or not, but the content of the conversation seemed to be saying, there's nothing else for us to talk about. She wanted to resolve this in the shortest time possible. The entire process took no more than 3 minutes. At the same time, while Xiao Lu wore a flabbergasted expression by the receptionist desk, Yan Qing walked straight to Chen Jinyao's office familiarly. Xiao Lu was shocked by the bouquet of roses bigger than the basin used for showers. She froze for a few seconds before rubbing her fingers against the mouse, envious of Chen Jingyao. The conclusion she came up with was that the man that captured Dr. Chen's heart must be out of the ordinary. Xiao Lu couldn't see Chen Jinyao's office from her direction. No matter how much she tried to look around, she couldn't see anything. She slowly shifted her gaze and suppressed her urge to gossip. She sighed lightly, feeling pitiful. A streak of sunshine occupied the corridor. There were little faint specks in the air floating around. Yan Cheng paused and stopped in time, standing in front of Chen Jinyao's office. He suddenly placed away his dreamy expression and suppressed his pride. It was quite magical. Now, he acted like he missed her very much. He pursed his lips and tidied up his clothes according to his mood. This was scarier than the first time the two went on a blind date. If he could, he probably would want to stand in front of a mirror to change and see if his hairstyle was alright. He felt conflicted for a few minutes before recovering his confidence. The corner of his lips couldn't help but tug up. The roses rustled as he hid it behind him. Then, he knocked on the door. "Please enter." After Chen Jingyao posted in her friend's circle, she lifted her head. He twisted the door knob, not rushing to enter. Instead, he leaned against the door and posed, lifting his brows. "Hey." Chen Jingyao didn't know what to say. The man wore different clothes from his casual and usual outfit. He wore a white shirt coupled with a tie. His neat suit pants clearly outlined his behind. How could he possibly hide the huge bouquet of roses behind him when he was posing ostentatiously like that? When their gazes met, Chen Jingyao suddenly felt like she was the bride and the groom was coming to pick her up. The visuals were vivid in her mind. Chen Jingyao sighed and then revealed a confused expression. "I'm a bit frightened," she said calmly. She even wanted to delete the post she made to her friend's circle. If she must show affection like the way he did, she thought her heart might not be able to endure the shock. Her face gradually turned red. She narrowed her eyes and stood up, walking towards Yan Cheng. "I didn't think you'd do these superficial things." Yan Cheng walked in and closed the door, leaning lazily against the door. He placed the bouquet of roses in front of him and exclaimed arrogantly, "TCH, don't look down on me. I have countless advisors supporting me, they must all be inept advisors, no." Chen Jingyao received the flowers and admired it momentarily before placing it to the side. Compared to the charming and blooming vibrant red roses, it was clear that she was more attracted by the man. Chen Jingyao sighed inside. After women hit a certain age, their desires multiplied by tenfolds. She wrapped her arms around Yan Cheng's waist carelessly and even touched him up and down. She knew that Yan Cheng wanted to pursue her. To speak the truth, they really acted like a couple right now. She lifted her head and stood on her tippy toe, kissing his chin. "If a man likes you appears in front of me a few times acting this way, I normally won't talk to them ever again." Chapter 87. Peacock Searches for Mate, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yan Cheng brought her into his arms. She already wrapped her arms around his waist, yet she wants to maintain some distance from him. He revealed an expression as to say, "Women all like to lie." He narrowed his eyes and curled his lips up. "But you threw yourself in my arms." He seemed to be saying this in a proud tone even. Chen Jingyao clenched her teeth and pinched him. He had a nice figure and there was no fat on him. She couldn't even pinch him. She suddenly paused, her words stuck in her mouth. In the end, it became, "You have a nice waist." What was scary was that Yan Cheng shyly laughed when he heard her praise. Chen Jingyao exclaimed, "Your inept advisor came up with the idea of giving me flowers." Yan Cheng shook his head. He refused to let anyone take his spotlight. Chen Jingyao answered expressionlessly and came up with the conclusion, "Then your inept advisor must have suggested transferring money, giving me red envelopes, and came up with your hairstyle. In reality, women were hypocrites. At least, when Chen Jingyao saw Yan Cheng's message, she felt shocked but more so sweet inside, as if she had just dropped into a jar of honey. I like the one in the front. She didn't act shy either. The one behind was pretty good too. The pose is normal, but I don't like your expression. Don't tug the corner of your lips up. Right, right. You need to act reserved. Otherwise, it doesn't seem like you're here to pick up your wife with that playful smile of yours. After that she paused and then swallowed her last sentence. She licked her lips and decided to reword it tactfully. Yan Cheng was dumbstruck. They remained silent for 2 minutes and then the two finally separated from the embrace. After all, they couldn't stand by the door the entire time, right? Their position seemed a bit indescribable. Chen Jingyao walked to her desk and turned with one hand behind supporting her. She looked up and lifted her brows. What's your plan after I get off work? Yan Cheng responded honestly, let's go eat. I reserved seats at a restaurant. The sunshine silently poured in and there seemed to be specks of dust floating in the air. Yan Cheng shoved his hands into his pocket and lazily looked down. What he saw was Chen Jinyao's expression and she seemed to be saying, told you so. The fingers rubbing against the clothes paused and the man immediately realized that his plan was common and generic. It wasn't unique at all. Chen Jinyao guessed his plan without any effort. There was no surprise whatsoever. He shifted his gaze and touched his nose, feeling a bit awkward. Chen Jinyao continued, you also booked a room in a hotel. Yan Cheng was flabbergasted. The office suddenly became silent and the atmosphere immediately tensed up. After a while, Yan Cheng turned and looked at Chen Jinyao again, feeling like he had just been burnt by her words. Wearing an extremely serious expression, he walked to her and pinched her chin, forcing her to look at him. He pursed his lips and said crudely, look at my eyes. After a while, Yan Cheng declared, that's not who I am. Don't frame me. Chen Jinyao doubted his words and responded half-heartedly, oh. Tch, Yan Cheng narrowed his eyes and suddenly laughed. He cleared his throat, but if you want it now, it's not too late either. Chen Jinyao was speechless. Yan Cheng laughed and checkmated. They looked at each other silently. Chen Jinyao didn't admit defeat. Sure. Yan Cheng's smile froze and he was bewildered. To speak the truth, this happened too quickly and he couldn't process it. It was the complete opposite of what he imagined it to be. Damn it, he was actually caught unprepared. He was completely defeated. After a while, he found his voice. What did you say? Sure. Chen Jinyao lifted her chin high, smiling a provoking smile. She said the words slowly as to give him a lingering death. Yan Cheng was speechless. He didn't lose anything this time. Chapter 88. The Chain Reaction of Flirting, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A plan devised under provocation couldn't be appeased easily. While waiting for Chen Jinyao to get off work, Yan Cheng lazily sat by the sofa and crossed his legs over each other. He curled his lips up halfway. The atmosphere was peaceful and calm. However, he was impatient, eyeing secretly at Chen Jinyao who was already immersed in work from time to time. No wonder people said that conscientious women were most charming. She kept her eyes down, her slender and curly eyelashes slightly trembling. The sunshine poured in from outside the window and shone on her profile, making her look more gentle. Men acted upon visuals. In that moment, Yan Cheng felt as if his heart had been beaten by a hammer lightly. It caused him to instinctively move back and hold in his breath. The longer they got along together, the more clearly Yan Cheng knew that he couldn't control his feelings for Chen Jinyao at times. It wasn't because he was superficial and thought that she was beautiful. Rather, there were other emotions involved. His calm and peaceful mood was interrupted by the overwhelming of emotions flooding in his heart. He should have been angry and flustered. However, for some magical reason, he was like a coward and was overwhelmed by the sweet feeling instead. Thankfully, they had a steady relationship and even more, it was improving. Thinking of the silent promise they made with their gaze, Yen Cheng looked down and felt delighted inside. The rooms today can't be booked easily. His slender and long fingers slid across the phone screen. Yen Cheng realized that his spontaneous plan was a bit too late. Hearing this, Chen Jinyao lifted her brows and said casually, "It's okay if you can't book a room. That won't work. Classmate Chen Jinyao, you can't give up halfway through." The man almost immediately blurted this. He said in seriousness, reprimanding, and then he paused. "It's not easy to book a reasonably priced room. We'll book the best room then." There was a hotel in the capital in the middle of the mountain. The top floor was a luxurious suite. One could admire the view from down below and capture the scene of the capital. The surroundings of the suite were enveloped by glass. One could see outside, but outsiders couldn't see the situation inside. Even so, one still felt a sense of excitement. Chen Jinyao was speechless. "Tch," Yen Cheng said, "it's rare for me to be romantic. I can't treat myself unfairly." Before Chen Jinyao could turn and add on, he already made up his mind. He directly contacted the person in charge of the hotel and booked the entire suite down. Chen Jinyao remained silent for a few seconds and glanced at the time. Then she looked at him. She licked her lips and said slowly, "Can I take back my suggestion now?" "No," the man's cold and deep voice rang. Then, he silently pointed at his waist and exclaimed, "Think about how much you drooled over my abs." Chen Jinyao's gaze started drifting away. After a while, she then exhaled and then said meaningfully, "Hubby, if you treat everyone as a pervert, you won't be able to maintain a long-lasting relationship with them." "I'm not sure about that." Yen Cheng tilted his head and swept his gaze over her. Ever since they made everything clear last time, everything changed. Their relationship had sped up and was developing more so in the intimate way. It felt as if they had become absolutely unrestrained after resolving the issue that gnawed at their minds. The couple gradually started talking dirty and whatnot. Even then, they didn't seem shy in the least bit. Yen Cheng knew his position. As a man, and a man that was used to going to bars, he'd have lewd talks with his friends whenever they got together. In this aspect, he was a self-made genius and talented. At the beginning, he never really talked to Chen Jinyao about this. Up until they became more and more intimate later on. He'd jokingly spew some lewd talk. Sometimes, he was still worried Chen Jinyao might become bashful and hide inside her shell as a result. Chapter 89. The Chain Reaction of Flirting, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Who knew that Chen Jinyao reacted beyond his expectation? She transformed into an aloof big sister before she even became drunk. She had a lot of fighting strength. Under the sunset, the warm orange color made Yen Cheng's expression look more gentle. But it was only momentarily. It felt like an illusion. The man's icy aura seemed to have warmed. He slightly narrowed his eyes and a faint smile floated on his face. Right now, this was a beautiful scene to watch. There was a sweet and lovey-dovey atmosphere in the air. It was warm and peaceful. However, there was a change of plan. 10 minutes before Chen Jinyao got off work, Mother Yen called Yen Cheng. She wanted him to take Chen Jinyao home for dinner. Although the couple would go eat at their family's places sometimes. It was clear that they went to Chen family more eagerly than Yen family. It mostly had to do with Yen Cheng. When he was single, he didn't really like going home. He and Father Yen would never be able to sit down and chat calmly. Every time, before they could talk for a bit, one would explode. Yen family has outstanding children. But once Yen Cheng started avoiding his father, Father Yen looked down upon him for idling his time away. Yen Qing acted like this as a child. Father Yen clearly cared about Yen Qing, but he would always say unpleasant words. At that time, Yen Qing was arrogant and had his eyes above his head. Whenever he was scolded, he would talk back. Since then, the two started disliking one another. More accurately, their relationship was like Li Jing and Neza. Especially after the rumors came out about Yen Qing liking Zhou Shui. Father Yen wanted to break his leg. Since then, Yen Qing got used to this kind of lifestyle. Even more, it became a lingering issue. Of course, Yen Qing thought these were superficial issues. He thought that it was because of his personality that he didn't want to stay in the restricted Yen family. His relatives were all really nice, but they would give him invisible pressure. Sometimes, on the more serious side, he felt suffocated. There were always lots of people in the Yen family. Yen Qing was ranked 6 in the family, the youngest. When he was just born, he had a weak body. Thus, he was protected greatly. Mother Yen treated him like a treasure. Father Yen frequently said that Mother Yen pampered and spoiled her youngest son too much. However, the words went in one ear and out the other for Mother Yen. She didn't treat this seriously. Of her children, only her youngest son was good at sweet talking. Therefore, why couldn't she pamper him more? Father Yen felt at a loss of words. He didn't know what to say. As for second Master Yen, he lifted his brows and patted Yen Qing's shoulders when he passed by him. He said in certain, "Mother pampers you too much." Before he could finish, he received the young Yen Qing's provoking expression. "You must be jealous." Yen Qing humphed. He looked at his younger brother as if showing concern for a retard. "Mother has been excessively pampering you. That means that you might encounter the eternal difficult question, who will you save first when your mother and wife both fall into the water?" Yen Qing was at his prime age. He was worry-free like a little ball of sunshine. Why would he consider such a long-term question? He was stumped right then. "Do you understand the daughter-in-law and mother dilemma?" Yen Qing laughed. Yen Qing was speechless. In reality, Yen Qing's alarmist talk was a bit reasonable. However, some unanticipated incident happened. In front of his siblings at Yen family's residence, Yen Qing would occasionally act like a harmless and careless little sheep. But when he left the residence, he took off his disguise and revealed himself to be a wolf. Besides thinking usually, he'd act quite funnily sometimes. However, he had deep and scheming thoughts. The incident originated from Zhou Shui. Chapter 90. The Chain Reaction of Flirting, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yen Qing acted excessively early on, making it seem like that he must have Zhou Shui. This sped up the marriage between Hua Qidong and Zhou Shui, the two people he disliked. Wanting to keep up the act the entire way, he still played along afterwards for a bit. Up until he got on a blind date with Qin Jinyao and married her. At that time, to speak the truth, Mother Yen had no requirements of Yen Qing's wife anymore. Why would she be picky when her son found someone who he liked? Instead, she would have to go and thank the woman for being willing to marry her troublesome and blind young son. Even more, Mother Yen really liked Qin Jinyao. There was no such thing as a dilemma between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. To add on, Qin Jinyao was much more valued by Mother Yen than Yen Qing, her personal son. No matter how much Mother Yen pampered Yen Qing, she didn't reach the point where she'd blindly pamper him. In other words, she knew about her son's position and personality. She originally planned on blindly believing in her youngest son, believing that he was outstanding. However, after encountering Qin Jinyao, her daughter-in-law, her dream was shattered. Even more, Mother Yen gradually wavered to the other side. Then, she started having completely opposite thoughts. Qin Jinyao was like a blooming flower inserted on manure, Yen Qing. That's how Mother Yen described the relationship between her son and daughter. Law. Clearly, she was talking smack about her youngest son, Yen Cheng. Sometimes, when Yen Cheng returned home with Chen Jinyao to visit his parents, her mother would talk too much and joke about the two of them. "Mother, you're wrong," Yen Cheng obviously retorted. Whenever they encountered this situation, Chen Jinyao would smile along with Mother Yen for a while before speaking up for Yen Cheng. Mothers would never really talk smack about their sons like that. In the end, she was just testing to see if her daughter. Law would be on her son's side. Yen Cheng froze slightly before smiling. He kissed Chen Jinyao's face in front of Mother Yan's face. Then, Mother Yen sighed and exclaimed, "It's good that men have their wives." Chen Jinyao pushed Yen Cheng. The couple fought in front of Mother Yen, causing her to laugh out loud. Mother Yen exclaimed, "You guys need to treat each other well, especially you. Little Six, be nice to your wife, otherwise I'll have your father break your leg." Yen Cheng placed his arms on Chen Jinyao's shoulders and lifted his chin. "I know." Therefore, from some degree, Yen Cheng wasn't stupid when he got in a scandal with Zhou Shui back then. At the very least, Mother Yen and Chen Jinyao were able to get along well. Even more, the concern that everyone in the family voiced had never happened. This was really all due to the chain reaction of flirting. "Oh, your father and the rest aren't at home. Am I not allowed to ask you and Yao Yao to come home for dinner?" Through the call, Mother Yen could tell that Yen Cheng wasn't willing to come. She narrowed her eyes and said firmly, "Don't try to find an excuse. You have to come home often to visit your parents, don't you understand?" Yen Cheng felt complicated. After a while, he nodded. I do." Mother Yen relaxed her tone and exclaimed, "Most importantly, your father isn't at home. I'm home alone bored. I had Aunt Zhao cook quite a few dishes to help you recuperate." "Recuperate what?" Yen Cheng slightly furrowed his brows. With his natural observational skills, he immediately knew that this wasn't as simple as he thought. Hearing this, Mother Yen giggled. "What else? Silly son, you and Yao Yao had been married for half a year already." She said this meaningfully. Yen Cheng looked at Chen Jinyao and the latter also looked at him questioningly. They gazed at each other. Then, he heard her mother press slowly, "When can I have my little treasure grandson?" Yen Cheng was speechless. Oh, this definitely wasn't just a simple dinner.